Hey English 111 students, it's Miss Williams. Welcome to week 8 of our 13-week semester. We are going to start working on formal assignment 3 this week. So the good news is that you don't have anything due this week, but the other news is that you have a lot of work to do this week that's due next week. So I'm going to hop on over to the slides these are actually attached with this week's assignments. If you want to be able to access these, they are attached with this week's assignment. So be sure that you open these up if you have questions about the project, if you have questions about due dates, what I'm going to be grading you on, and what needs to be a part of the artist statement. So the week before last, y'all decided what topic you wanted to write about for this project, what genre of writing you wanted to use, whether it's a website, a video, a podcast, social media posts, an article, a children's book. That's your genre of writing. And then you chose your topic as well. And then you did research for your annotated bibliography. So now you're at the point where you're actually getting started working on genre project number 3. What do you need to include in your project, and what are you going to be graded on? That's what these slides are all about. And again, these are posted with this week's assignment, so be sure you open this up if you have questions before you email me. So you have all this week to work on this project. We're not going to do peer review on this project until next week. So next Tuesday through Friday, November the 14th through the 17th, you'll be posting your work from this week, and you'll have a partner and you'll do peer review. There's 2 parts to this project. There's the artist statements, which is the reflection of everything that you did for the project, and I'll get into more of that in the next couple slides. But then there's also the actual part of the project where you're building a website, where you're making your podcast, where you're creating your social media posts. So if you have questions specifically about any of those components, then make sure that you reach out to me sooner rather than later to find out what my expectations are specifically for those things, your genre. So for example, in the discussion board a few weeks ago when y'all posted on the topic that you were choosing and the genre of writing you were choosing, I basically gave you some feedback, in my opinion, what your research should be. If you were doing a genre that wasn't appropriate, like a research paper, which nobody wants to read, then, I told you need to pick a different genre. But, if you are, for example, doing a series of social media posts about mental health, then what are my expectations for social media posts? Well, you need to figure out what social media you're doing. Like, is it TikTok? Is it Instagram? Is it Twitter? And then you need to look at that, that actual social media platform and figure out what you need to include in your posts. Do you need to do actual posts? Not necessarily. There's templates out there for Instagram, for Twitter. You can make a video that's intended for TikTok without actually posting it on TikTok or YouTube. So I don't expect you to actually post your work onto any of those platforms, but I do expect you to have all the components within your post that you would, if you were going to copy and paste onto Instagram, what image, the hashtags, all that stuff that you would have for each of the posts. And again, if you have questions about any of that, make sure that you reach out to me so I can answer you specifically, since everybody's doing different genres of writing. Okay, so what are you going to be graded on? Does your genre fit your topic, and is it a good example of that genre? So again, if you're building a website using Weebly about baseball, then how many pages do you have on there? Do you have good images? Do you have links to other sites, to other information? I don't expect you to be a professional website designer. I certainly am not, but you've looked at enough websites to know, to have a pretty good idea of what you need. Um, so make sure that you put some time and effort into creating that website, because if it's literally one page with one image, then that's not a website. If it's a video, if it's a podcast that you're making about the best NBA basketball player that ever played, the debate about that, then, most podcasts are at least 20 minutes long. So is your podcast 15 to 20 minutes long, or is it 5 minutes long, which is not a podcast? So make sure that you're following the rules of your specific genre for what you need to do for your work. Is your genre appropriate for your audience? If you're making a children's book, have you looked at other children's books for fourth grade students so that you know what you need to include and what's appropriate for them? Effectiveness of the message. Did it fulfill your purpose? And then length and timeliness. Again, one social media post is not a project. 5 social media posts, yes, that's good. It should be a series of posts, not just one post. So again, if you have any questions about any of that, you need to ask me sooner rather than later. The other part that you're going to be turning in for peer review and also with your final project is the artist statement. So this is where you kind of step back and reflect on your topic, your genre, and all of the decisions you made as you were working on the project. It needs to be about 750 to 1,000 words. So that's, 2 to 3 pages. And it's got 3 different parts in it. So here you'll see that there's 3 sections to your artist statement. The first section is something you can go ahead and work on Monday, because it's really all about the background before you start working on your project. And some of you may have already started, but so you really need to answer all of these questions in your artist statement for part 1. And then on the next slide, parts 2 and 3. Part 2 is, walk us chronologically through while you're doing the project. What went well, what didn't go well, etc. So just answer all those questions. And then part 3, now that your project is done, how did it turn out? So answer all those questions. Remember, as you're working on this, you're following the rules of MLA. Everything's double spaced, Times New Roman 12-point font. You have a header. Everyone's title should be the same. Artist statement. You don't have to have a unique title. Make sure you only have about 5 sentences per paragraph. If you've got 5 sentences, start a new paragraph. Some of you like to write paragraphs that are literally a page long, and that is not good. So write 5 sentences. If it takes you 5 sentences to answer one of these questions, that's fine, but start a new paragraph after that. How do you submit everything? Well, obviously next week for peer review, you'll have a discussion board. You'll copy and paste your link, or, your posts, your paper, whatever you've done for your genre project. Give your partner a way to access that, whether it's a link or whatever. And then you'll also put the rough draft of your artist statement in the discussion board so that they can look at both things for you and give you some feedback. And I'll have some guidelines for that, for you giving your partner feedback. And then that last day of class before Thanksgiving break, which is Tuesday, November 21st, that's when the final draft of both of these things are due. So you'll have 2 different links, and that'll be not next week, not this week, not next week, but really it'll be the following week's assignments. You'll have a link to turn in your genre project, and then you'll have a link to turn in the artist statement. So you should be able to click on that week's assignments and see those links, because there won't be anything else there, since this is all we're doing that week as well. So if you guys have questions while you're working on this, make sure you reach out to me. One thing that I've helped my students with in the past is kind of thinking about how you're going to organize your information. And so you always have to really go back to the question that you're trying to answer with your project, with your genre project. What question is it that you're trying to answer? So that's up here on the screen. What is the question you're trying to answer with this project? And then how can you divide up that answer to that question into three main ideas? So, for example, I also teach at Belmont Abbey, and most of my students there are athletes. I've got a lot of rugby players this semester, and one of my rugby players is he's building a website using Weebly and showing his audience how to make a scrum in rugby. And I really don't know much about rugby. I know what the scrum is, what it looks like anyway, when they all kind of get in a pile with each other. But I don't really know why they do that. I don't know really much about the background of rugby. So this is his question. And then we talked about how he would build his website. How does he divide up the answer to that question in about three main ideas? So we came up with the general rules and overview of rugby would be one of his pages on his website. Then he would explain the scrum on another page on his website, and he would have, images, links, etc. And then how do you actually participate as a player? Who are the players that participate in that? What is each player doing? That would be another page. So we figured he would have a total of 4 pages, because then he would have a resources page too. So this would be a page with links to other websites that would be helpful for your audience, links to other videos that you didn't include on these 3 pages. It's always good if you're building a website to have a resource page, because most websites do. I've got another student in that class who is a film buff, and he wants to create a website on what makes a good film, So his first page, he's going to have 4 pages on his website. His first page is the general elements of film, photography, story, script, and he's going to give some information about those things. And then he's using 2 different films as examples. So he's going to do Citizen Kane. And on that page, he's going to have some analysis of photography, story, and script, as well as images and video from that film. And then he's also going to have a page on Schindler's List, where he analyzes the same important elements of that film. Again, he's got text, he's got link to video, and he's got images. And then he's going to have another resources page. So that's kind of an example of how I've helped students in the past think about how to divide up their information. So if you were doing a series of social media posts, I would think of the same way. How are you going to divide up the answer to your question in a series of posts? And posts are different than a website. When you've got social media posts, you can't post as much information together. That's why I would say you probably need at least 5 posts to cover everything that you would cover in 3 pages or 4 pages on a website. You probably need at least 5 posts for social media, just because you have you can include less information for each of your posts. So think about that. I know obviously if you're doing a children's book, it's a little bit different as well. But you're still thinking about, really the rule of 3. We can only really hit 3 main ideas with anything that we do, or it's just going to be too much information for your audience. So if you're doing a children's book on sharing, then what are the 3 most important parts of sharing that you really want to include? And how can you do that in, 10 pages, which is however many pages the length of the average children's book is for that particular age group. So this is the kind of thing I can help you with if you reach out to me through email or text. And we don't necessarily have to get on Zoom or even a phone call and talk. But if you reach out to me and just say, Miss Williams, this is my topic, I'm doing a website. Can you help me kind of figure out how to break this down so that I know, I can kind of tackle this, help me outline, then I would be happy to do that. But if I were you, I would do that. Reach out to me on Monday, Tuesday at the latest, so that I can get back to you in a timely manner and help you with that at the beginning of the week, rather than you reaching out to me on Friday and saying, I don't know what to do for my website, when you literally have had all week to figure that out and you obviously weren't working on what you're supposed to. So, if you have questions or if you need help, make sure you reach out earlier rather than later, and I will try to make myself available for y'all. Have a great